Hi everyone, I wanted to quickly look at the time options under the layer menu. So with some of those functions we can speed up, slow down, reverse and play around with our compositions. I've got a bit of video here which I'll turn into a comp. Just drag that over there, and it's a bit of video of a skater. It's already slowed down to a degree. So I'll just select that and let's have a look what we've got under those options, layer, time. And to start with, we can freeze on last frame. So for example, if I trimmed this clip down to this amount of time here, it just cut out at that point. But if I select layer, time, freeze on last frame, now it will just stop at that point, which is kind of good. And I might want to add some easy ease to that to kind of ease into the last frame, kind of stopping there, which makes it a little bit more fluid. I'm going to undo that and have a look at the next option there. We've got time, and we can freeze a frame. So I could, if I wanted to pick a particular frame, for example this one here, and freeze it, it'll add this hold keyframe there. So that means that wherever I am in the composition, it's really only displaying that one frame. Next option there under time is to stretch time. So for example, if I had a composition that was maybe longer than what I've got here, I'm going to make it 20 seconds long. And now you can see that my clip finishes and I've got all this leftover time here. If I want to stretch out my artwork, or indeed kind of speed it up, I can do that with this option here, time stretch. So I can add like a percentage increment. So if I wanted to make it twice as long, to slow it down twice as much, I'd add in kind of a stretch factor of 200, or if I wanted to make it shorter, I could lower that increment below 100. I'm going to add in 200 and it should end up making it around about twice as long. So now I've got a really slow mo. Undo that, and what else have we got there? A couple of final things. Time reverse layer. So if I add that, it's going to play our frames backwards. So now our kick flip looks really complicated. And finally, and this is probably the most interesting thing under the layer time options here, we've got enable time remapping. And that's not going to do anything straight away. It's adding a couple of keyframes, but it's added on this new property here called time remap. And what we can do with that is we can actually remap time. So you can see here that my clip now is extendable. So I could I can utilize that full length of the comp now. So you can see now that when I do play that through, that last frame just kind of holds there because we're holding on this last frame in time. We could flip around those frames so that now, oops, probably could have done that a bit closer to the start, but at this point it's going to play from the end backwards, and you can see now that if I bring these two keyframes right up to the front, if I compress them really close together, this is the start of the clip and this is the end of the clip, and now I've got something moving really quickly. So I can kind of bend time and mess around with time. Keyframing time. So if I wanted to have them going forward and backwards, I could copy that frame, that's the start frame, paste that somewhere down the timeline, and now he'll go forward and then he'll come backwards. How good is that? The other thing that we can do is we can play with time, play with the kind of velocity of our time. So maybe we can start here, finish here, but in the middle we can add another keyframe and we can maybe speed up and slow down what's happening here. So I'm going to flip over to the graph editor and have a look at our graphs, or our speed graph curves here. And I'm going to create something that comes in really quickly, rapidly, and then drops off to a slow speed. So kind of in the middle of the air, you'll hit this point where it almost stops and then starts again. So let's have a look at that. In fact, it does stop. So that's really great for kind of creating action sequences or emphasis, anticipation. So I just brought that keyframe up off the ground a little bit so that it doesn't actually come to a stop in the air. So that's fantastic. Keyframing time using the enable time remapping. So we're remapping time really. And just finally, let's add an expression to that. So we'll add an expression and we'll just add the loop out expression. And so that will add the loop to these keyframes. So it'll continue to cycle through those keyframes for as long as we have time in our composition. And in he comes again. So a good way to play around with video, play around with the time in the video. But this is not a technique that we could only use for video. You've got any composition that you've made that's purely made out of keyframing. You could pre-compose that that composition of animated keyframed material, and indeed time remap that so that you could speed up and slow down your own animation work.